Let me guess. You wanted visibility, and then when it started happening, you started to freak out a little bit. This is a completely normal feeling, and I'm going to be talking about how you can manage that and acknowledge it, work through it, so that you can actually be seen and not be scared to be seen, even though it feels a little bit scary right now. Because if you're starting to get the vibe of what if people do actually start to see this, more people start to comment, I get backlash from it, it's actually a really good sign that you're doing something well, that you're doing something good, because it probably means that you've started, or you're at least confidently starting to think about starting, and maybe you're getting a little bit of traction. Maybe you have got a little troll comment pop up there and you're thinking, God, if that went on, what would I do? And so when you get that comment, that backlash, or people start questioning what you're saying, you freeze a little bit. You start thinking, do I need to delete this episode? Like, should I take it away? Should I turn off comments off this clip? Whatever it might be. Like, I wasn't really ready for this. I'm a bit scared. And you start to think, like, if this keeps growing, what's going to happen? And I remember this, even though I totally knew, put myself online, and the whole point was to grow a following and to get seen and to get followers and build an audience. When I went viral for the first time, it was just going mental. The numbers were wild, and I mean numbers in all cases. The TikTok numbers, that's what was driving it, but the TikTok numbers were going up, the comments were increasing, the downloads on the podcast were going, and that was like, okay. And then it was all the people joining the Facebook group, all the requests, and then all the comments in there. It was huge. And that was just one episode of things going viral. And then there was the other time when it started to swirl. I put this video out about singlehood in some way, and it got into what I would probably call starting towards that kind of incel community area. People were not happy with what I was saying, and it did get there. But it didn't stop me from saying what I wanted to say, but it does make you start to question it, and you think, well, should I be fairer? Should I be more diplomatic with what I'm saying? And this brings me back to this whole concept of, should you be putting strong opinions out there online? And I don't think we should be doing that just slightly unethical strategy of just being extreme for the sake of being extreme. If you do have a strong position, then it's worth putting it out there because it's going to get heard, it's going to get some momentum. But at the same time, it doesn't mean you can't have a good debate. I think the art of good debate and conversation is slowly dying, and another thing that podcasts can bring. But this kind of fear of being seen, of putting your ideas out there, shouldn't be stopping you, but it might be. It's not a content issue, this is that fear within yourself, that worry underneath. And it's not about the talking. Like, you can practically show up on camera and do stuff. It's more like the personal side of putting yourself out online, of sharing that opinion, that's starting to make you, what am I going to be doing? Like, people are going to see what I think, see what I believe, see what I'm saying about a certain particular topic. And what if they don't like that? What if they don't agree? What if they think something about the way that I've got here that isn't right, or that they wouldn't have done it? And this work and the stuff that you're sharing can be quite deep stuff. This is stuff that you've probably gone through. If you're going to really, tell your story, you're going to share those experiences. And you're just thinking, what if someone thinks what I did was wrong? And what if I get it wrong in what I've said? What if I actually put an opinion out there that I later change my mind on? What if I'm not right? And then there's also the fear of, what if I don't get seen at all? I know that's always there, but it's like the reverse opposite. It's like, what if I'm really seen? And what if people still don't choose me? Don't approve of what I think? Don't agree with me? What if I'm cancelled? I mean, cancel culture is huge right now. People don't have a tolerance level for accepting anybody that doesn't have the same opinion of them as them. And it's so interesting because I have these feelings, maybe not around podcasting so much. I'm quite happy to put that out there. But there are things that are more topical that I'm like, I think I want to talk about that, although it's not. And I have to be really careful here because I could by accident start going into blurring my own podcast because I start talking about those things. But at the same time, I always want to build a platform. I want to build a platform for progressing the world. And I want to make sure that it's done in a healthy way, that we're creating conversations, that you're not just saying it's the only right way. Even though I believe that you should be happy being single, I don't think that being in a relationship is a worse scenario than being single, and vice versa. I don't think either is better. I think that there are better times for better things. And I've made some bold statements because they resonate, such as why you should be single in your 20s. Like, that would have solved so many problems for people if we just gave our time to explore ourselves. Whereas we're in such a rush, and we're trained to be in such a rush to be with someone, that we end up not really ending up with the right person, hence what I did. And so that's why I believe that. But it should almost feel a little bit like a risk. It should feel like, maybe I am gonna piss a few people off with this. And that's not because you're intentionally set out to do that, but that's where you should be edging towards your opinions. If we go back to the previous episode, if you're going to stand out, you've got to put something new, something interesting out there. And sometimes that's going to be an opinion that doesn't fit the mold. Sometimes it's going to be something new that people have never, ever thought of before. And that's going to mean that people have to challenge what they're thinking. It means that they're going to have to challenge what they do. But that fear that you're experiencing isn't a stop sign. It's a green light for go. Because it's just teetering out of the comfort safety zone. Anything that you jump in front of camera and you think, oh, this is easy, I can just talk about this, nothing really to learn, same old, probably isn't interesting enough to get any attention online. Unless it's a very dry how-to video. We're looking for something that stirs up emotion and not just anger at the fact that they think differently to you, but stirs up contemplation, stirs up new perspectives, consideration of, oh, I haven't thought of that before. I didn't know that. I hadn't even considered that. So when you start to feel these ideas, you're thinking, oh, should I do an episode on that? Should I not do an episode on that? Should I be brave enough to do that? That's probably when you're in the right zone. Probably when you're starting to actually get to content that is actually going to get you seen. Because now we're not just there playing it safe, thinking this fits nicely into this box. It's going, okay, let's see what people think. And this happened the other day when I did a very quick and easy video. Just a talking head. They're my favourite to do, actually. They're easier than a podcast because you can just grab your phone. But sometimes I ramble in them too much. I ramble on the podcast too. But this is a belief. It was about a belief that I have held for so long. And quite frankly, I'm getting the ump. I'm genuinely getting the ump with people not realising this and people not bloody listening. I don't say it enough though, and that's why. But what I'm sick and tired of hearing is people coming to me and saying, I'm going to start a podcast. Lovely, I actually think that's a great idea. But I really want to interview all these people. No. For most people, when they speak to me about that, at the time that they are thinking of starting a podcast to grow their audience, interview guest is the worst idea ever. Worse. Why? Because they have no reason to share your episode. If anything, they want to poach your audience. And who's doing all the hard work for them? You. You're sorting out the recording, you're sorting out a contract, you're editing, you're uploading, you're scheduling, you're creating social media posts, and then you say to them, please can you share it? And they might, but they probably won't. So unless you're able, and this is slightly different, but unless you're able to get a name, this is a strategy that loads of people use. For events, they bring in the names to draw the audience. So unless your name, the name that you are getting onto your show, would actually draw an audience, i.e. they are very, very niche famous and have a loyal following. You're thinking Swifties-esque. Or they're an actual celebrity that pretty much like 75% of the UK would know just by their name. Then that concept of interview podcast is not right for you right now. Because you're just giving somebody else a stage, the opportunity to be in front of your audience. And that's not what we're about right now. And I did this video and said that stuff And it got more likes than anything has ever got. I don't think it's not superbly controversial. It bloody makes sense. It makes sense. And that's the point. The point is that you're not just being controversial to make an argument. You're making the point about something strong that you believe in because to those people it would make sense. And the beautiful thing about that one is that I'm not about likes and comments. I mean, it's a good indicator that something has resonated more. And then we had another element, which was 3 people individually identified either that it was a good piece of content and a great point to make, or that it made them think about their own podcast. One of them even described it was like you stabbed me in the heart. Like, because I just gotten to the point. And, I wasn't directing it at them, but they do have an interview podcast. And another person even wrote in the comments, is this about me? And it actually wasn't. But probably in my subconscious, like, that person's content who I work with, probably, it made me think, this person could be getting so many more views if they just did some solo episodes. That's how my mind is working. And so as a result of me putting that content out there, someone has changed their approach. I've been given validation by a lot of people, and it looks like it's cutting through the noise. And it's not anything different. It's not anything I have just said I believe for the sake of believing. That's what I believe. I hate the concept of an interview podcast when you're starting because it's really hard work and I don't think the payoff is there. Whereas I'd rather put a little less effort, but at least effort that's in my control in, and get a better result at the start and build my own platform and get seen in the industry and become industry famous. And then once I'm at a level, bring people on because I can then leverage their audiences as much as they can leverage mine. So it's a bit more like an ethical trade-off. And I've already started to get known for what I'm doing. I've already started to establish myself in what I do. You just see how that passion and that energy comes across so much stronger. But I put it off for so long. I didn't know if it was the right thing. And I should have just taken my own advice to put it out there a bit quicker. So this is you putting that truth, as we call it, out there. And it doesn't have to be superbly controversial. Why you should be single in your 20s. There would be loads of disagreement against that, particularly people that fell in love in their 20s and got married and have stayed together for a long time. But from a logical perspective, take a step back. Why do we rush? Again, I'm not saying that you're wrong to think otherwise, but I'm saying why I think what I think. And that's the beauty the podcast can offer you, to share your why a bit more. And yes, a clip might get taken out of context that highlights one particular element and gets you the attention. I've even clipped myself almost saying something about, you are going to be more lonely being single. Obviously, I'm a very big champion for being single. The truth is, that probably will happen, probability-wise. Oh, put that little clip on TikTok, though, and people hated it. It was good because it created conversation, but the hook, and sometimes people don't listen to the rest of, the next minute or so, and even then it might have explained it in full. Ultimately, engagement is something we do want to create, and we do want to grab attention. And I've not said it because I don't think it's not true. I wouldn't say things for controversial sake or if I don't think they're true. I'm saying things that are on the edge of, what's everyone going to think of that? And let's see. Let's put the cat amongst the pigeons. Let's see that. And I work with a client and she's very for her audience. And there will be a bunch of people that do not agree with what she says. It's very controversial. It's very topical. It even has political undertones because the government dictate what's going on. But what she always does is she remembers who she's for. She has been, I would argue that it's almost been attempted that she should be cancelled. Newspapers have come for her and she's not been the favourable person in those articles sometimes. But what it does is that the people that she's standing up for, who don't have a voice in that moment, absolutely adore her, come to her. The likes go up, the follows go up, and that all leads to, email subscriptions, people coming into her world, and potentially more clients. And she doesn't do it for controversial sake. She will be responding to something maybe that the government have done. She will be responding to something frustrating that's happened to her or one of her own clients and making it known. Not forgetting that a podcast can always be edited. If you say something that you later regret, you can, at least before it's published, get rid of it. You can think better of it. And we have to be aware of our responsibility as creators. There's not strong guidance on it right now, but you do have to be aware that whatever you're putting out online is a publication. You have to be aware that if you are giving away identifiable information, that depending on what you're saying about someone, you've got to understand that, depending on what you've said, could be liable for things like defamation, etc. And that's something to be aware of. And that can feel a bit scary too. That can feel like, well, I want to speak my truth, but I also don't want to get in trouble with courts, from a legal perspective. When it comes to things like that, I'm not a lawyer. Please make sure that you consult someone specific for that kind of thing. When it comes to things like that, I have a teaching background, so I've always been very aware of, like, what do you put online? In general, when it's about yourself, it's down to you. When it's about you, specifically you, and it's got no one else involved, you can say what you want, but I would always be aware that once it's like anything, once it's out there, it's out there. And so we as teachers have to be careful of what we put out online, even down to like hen do photos. If a hen do photo was seen as too extreme and a parent saw it and complained, that could cause you a problem in your job. And that's why you'll find that most teachers' platforms are shut down. The kids are always really surprised when they find me online because they're like, are you allowed? Yeah, I'm allowed because I'm not. Whatever I've said that is, inverted commas, maybe towards an edge of controversy, is not that controversial. And hey, look, I teach PSHE lessons, which includes a sex education curriculum. I'm not being funny. I probably teach you more extreme things within the curriculum in a classroom than I ever would in a dating episode online. Because a classroom, well, one, there's guidance about what you're being taught. It's provided material. And it's a small, safe environment. I'm not going to put the same things at any of those conversations. Not that I would, because those are children involved, obviously, and their questions are those. But even if it was an adult environment, I'm not going to do that publicly online. That's naive. That's silly. And the contexts are very different. You have to remember that maybe one day you will be employed again. And so anything that you've put online can be reviewed or seen by an employer or even someone that you're going to have a partnership with. That is something that you're opening yourself up to. But when it comes to mentioning other people, I always err on the side of caution. You have to be able to, my understanding is you have to be able to prove that what you're saying is true. And even if you make comment about someone, and you'll see this in newspapers, you have to give them right to reply. So, as I say, I'm not a legal advisor. This is just my understanding of what I've seen. And I think, well, if you can tell the story without being on the edge of defaming someone, or saying it in a way that it doesn't have to identify who that person is specifically. So obviously I mention my ex all the time. Whatever's happened between me and my ex, I'm very diplomatic about it because nothing bad happened. There's nothing to say. But also I'm not going to go into the stuff of the ins and outs of how it ended and anything that feels private that is private. There's no need. There's nothing that would compel me. If my story was different, possibly, but you'd still have to be aware of those things. So I don't want to put you off talking. I want to find the things that you can talk about. But I've got through 120 odd episodes on dating without having to mouth anyone off or to identify anyone in a way that I think would be embarrassing or legally open me up. When you come to guests, it's a whole other thing because you've got to get them to consent and stuff. So, whew. The point is that you can bring it all back to you, though. You can still tell all these stories. You can still get deep. You can still do this. And you just build this lovely natural momentum of visibility up. You don't have to be controversial. You don't have to share anything you don't want to. No one knows the ins and outs of my 7-year relationship. I don't talk about it much. I generalise how I felt. The detail doesn't matter. In some spaces, in some instances it doesn't. At certain points I'll give a little bit more detail if relevant. But there's not me using it in a way that's unethical or wrong. I'm sharing how I felt, my experience, and how I moved through it. It's about me. It's about you. Your story. And if anything drags other people in, we don't need it. Because I would like to think the people that you want to work with are people that they may be in the habit of blaming others. But really, we're after the The people that are ready to move on from that, they don't want to do that. They want to work on themselves. They know it's them. They know they've got a problem. They're not really sure how to navigate it. They think they might be part of the problem, even if terrible things have happened to them. And so, actually, we can portray that too. That we're more level-headed than getting fiery and responding and blaming. We're people that make space. We're people that listen. We're people that can be balanced even when difficult things happen. You can use your voice and be fair and balanced with what you're talking about, controversially, to show that you are a safe person, a good choice for the person who's listening, who might decide that they want to work with you. It is natural to feel scared about being heard, especially because you're saying something that's true and real, that people are going to feel some response to, positive or negative. But you don't need to become silent because of that fear. You need to see it as validation that it's probably worth saying, and that you can do it in a way that has a bit of integrity, that feels right, feels fair, and isn't about being blameful, being obnoxious, or being opinionated for the sake of it, but because you really got a reason to tell it, a reason to stand up for that belief. There's a real learning point from the story that you want to tell. And all you got to do is find that bravery to say it. It's normal. It might feel like you need to, and you're avoiding it right now. So I encourage you, if you want a safe space to test it out, come and join us in the Facebook group. Head to the link in the bio. Come see a safe space of change makers who are all going through this same thing at some point because they've started to put their voice out there. They're in their comfort zone. They're like, I need to say more stuff. I need to say a little bit more. I'm in that group. Feel free to put ideas in there and I will respond back when I see them. I want to make sure that you get your story heard. So until next time, stay bold, stay visible, and stay ready to be heard.